Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Dr. Rosensweet, how are you?
I'm good, Carolyn.
Very nice to hear. So I guess we're going to get straight into the questions, aren't we?
You got it. You got that figured out.
It's a telepathic kind of thing. I
Yes,
get it.
you know me well enough by now to read my every nuance.
That's right. Even before I even talked to you, I knew. Isn't that crazy? However, I have these things. They have question marks at the end. They're called questions, and I'm going to ask them. Number one. Okay. And this comes from a woman who we don't talk to often. Bless her. And I'm hoping that she's going to hear the answers to these. They're important to her. She's saying that she takes estrogen for migraines and also to protect her body, which is a good thing. She does have a uterus, but she just cannot tolerate any kind of prometrium or progesterone, she says. And she's wondering if you can tell her, in regards to these migraines and the estrogen, what maybe she can do about that.
Yes, yet another good question. First, the subject of migraines.
Yeah.
I mean, anyone who has ever had a headache, let alone a migraine, know that this is a big deal. And what's very interesting is there are many, many different causes of headaches.
Yes.
/ migraines. Doesn't matter what the official designation is. And there's a certain number of women who get migraines that it's related to hormones. And really, what it relates to in women, and they were called menstrual migraines, because the women who have headaches that are related to hormones, they tend to have them in relationship to their menses, their menstrual cycle. And when they tend to have those migraines is when the estrogen levels are super low. And that occurs twice during a healthy young woman's cycle. It occurs just before she starts to menstruate. And while she's menstruating, the estrogen levels are super low. And interestingly enough, it also occurs in a not as an extreme measure, but a very major estrogen dip takes place mid-cycle around day 12. So 2 times in a monthly cycle, when estrogen takes a natural dip, a natural lowness, goes low. And that cascading low in a woman who has this particular vulnerability to headaches, to migraines, she can get a migraine once or twice a month when her estrogen drops low. And these are menstrual migraines. Again, lots of causes of migraines / headaches. Sometimes it's hard to distinguish as a physician what's a migraine and what's a severe headache. There's different causes. But certainly in young women, let's say that I have a 30-year-old patient who comes to me. She said she never had headaches in her life. And then when she turned 29, every month she's getting a headache just before she goes into her period. Oh, screamingly loud clue that there's been a hormonal change. And the hormonal change has been the one I've spoken about so many times, that a young woman's estrogen levels, her hormone levels, they're the highest they'll ever be, plus or minus when she's 20. They start declining from that time on. Oh, in this patient, by the time she was 29, those estrogen levels had fallen low enough that her body reads low estrogen levels as stressful, and it can trigger a migraine. So that's a menstrual migraine, and it occurs when estrogen is low. And therefore, you want to discover whether a woman's having migraines, whether it's related to estrogen, give her estrogen. Bottom line, don't withhold estrogen. You can run a trial of giving her estrogen. Testing her is not going to help. You don't need to test her. You give her a trial of increasing her estrogen and see if those migraines go away. Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it. And it's wonderful what percentage, not every woman with a headache/migraine gets them alleviated by restoring adequate estrogen levels, but a lot do. So it's
what about progesterone?
thanks. I was heading there.
Oh, I'm
because
sorry.
I know that no, it's good. Keeping me on track. That's what you're doing. And that's the second part.
My sole purpose of existence.
May it go beyond that. I know you well enough to know you've got a lot more reason to exist than keeping me on track.
Well, 98% is devoted to you, but the other 2%, I get some stuff done.
So speaking of keeping on track, let's see if I can get back on track.
So progesterone, estrogen, hormones, menstrual headaches.
So
wild.
By now, there's a certain significant percentage of the population who's interested in menopause or interested in hormones that realizes that there's this balance between adequate progesterone and adequate estrogen. For example, estrogen's a stimulator. Stimulates the uterus, stimulates the growth of the uterine lining, stimulates the breast glandular tissue even to proliferate, stimulates. Estrogen can be recruited for the biology of the fight or flight response, stimulate. Progesterone, the great snoozer, the great calmer. The great calmer.
We like calm.
Oh, calm, big time.
Yeah.
And, you know, if I injected the proper dose of progesterone intravenous into you or me or anybody, proper dose, we'd get so calm, we'd go to sleep, and we'd go to sleep so deep, surgery could be performed on us. That's a very unusual hormone.
Yeah.
Almost any hormone you can name is a stimulator, and an animator, can be recruited for this biology of the fight or flight response, not progesterone. It's the great calmer. What happens to a woman who's losing her progesterone, as is common in the late 20s, early 30s?
Right.
Not using as much progesterone. She gets into a medical state called non-calm.
Oh, non-calm.
Non-calm, otherwise known as irritable, nervous, anxiety. When she says to herself, why in the world have I got anxiety? I've never had anxiety. I'm strong. I know how to live well, but I'm feeling these weird anxiety stuff. So progesterone, the diminishing of progesterone, as I mentioned in the book that you offer on the ins and outs of menopause, we know that progesterone can decline in relationship to estrogen earlier and more profoundly than estrogen does.
Right.
So, for one thing, adequate progesterone is needed to balance the estrogen effects on the endometrial lining.
Yes.
So, if a woman's in menopause and she's getting estrogen only, she's got something to consider, like, is she going to create too big of an endometrial lining because she has no balance from progesterone if she's not taking progesterone? This has long been known. So anyone who gets into hormones at all realizes that if you're going to give a woman estrogen, you want to be sure to be giving her progesterone to balance the estrogen. Duh, it's copying nature. Duh. We want to replicate what the original design is of women. Adequate or robust progesterone to balance the estrogen. In fact, in a young woman, she actually puts out 100 times as much progesterone than she does estrogen. So come on now, there must be a reason for progesterone.
A little bit off track, and I apologize, but so many of us who have been pregnant have stated how fabulous we felt, at one point.
And progesterone is one of those reasons.
Exactly.
I mean, women can go into Buddha-like states very commonly when they're...
That's a big question that just came up. We'll get to that later.
And a lot of it's from the tremendous amount of progesterone that's excreted. Now, fast forward. If you're going to be treating a woman with estrogen, you betcha you want to treat her with progesterone. In fact, the first thing I suggest that young women become alert to is the possibility that their progesterone is dropping even when they're regularly menstruating.
So many of us wish that we had known that.
And you can get over-the-counter progesterone, although I always recommend progesterone in our organic oils. You want to start treating with progesterone in your late 20s or early 30s if you're dropping. It's no big deal, and you can really prevent so much issues that you avoid just by getting into early treatment of progesterone. It's amazing. Now,
I would like to make it a law. Really, that we test and see where our progesterone is at and then replenish.
Not a bad idea.
I know. Just to add to the other stuff everybody's.
Yeah, I'm sure that's highest priority on a congressional docket these days.
Right. Well, for a lot of us who don't know, it is high priority, but not right here, right now. I get that.
No, I think however, here's the caveat. There's a certain number of women, it's not a huge percentage, they don't tolerate progesterone.
Right.
What the heck? And if I had to make a wild guess in my practice, I'd say 2% of the women that I've ever treated over 25 years didn't tolerate progesterone. I mean, any woman who ever regularly menstruated or ever got pregnant, her body loved progesterone and was used to super high levels of it.
Right.
Now, when it comes down to what happens if you don't take progesterone, well, this is not an illness.
Mm-hmm.
We deal with this woman by woman by woman. And when a woman seems to not tolerate the progesterone, there's a variety of techniques to see if she'll be able to tolerate it. And prometrium is 100 milligrams of oral progesterone. That's never where I would start to see. The dose is way too high from my perspective for a woman who doesn't tolerate it. So we do something very different. We start her on the organic oils topically, and we start with very, very low dose. Because, as I mentioned before, hormones are about hormones and receptor sites. And the hormones link up with the receptor sites, and from that union comes the effect. Well, if a woman's body hasn't seen hormones for a while, the receptor sites go dormant, they go to sleep. So sometimes when you give a woman progesterone whose progesterone receptor sites have been dormant for a long time, it feels like a tsunami, even if you give them a little amount. So a woman can have this feeling, I don't tolerate progesterone. Well, we never accept that point blank. We totally accept that, okay, you're having some challenges with progesterone. Let's approach it more cautiously, scientifically. Let's start with super low doses and see if it's really true that you don't tolerate progesterone. And we're very patient around this thing.
Yes.
So we can start with very low doses and gradually increase. The bottom line about progesterone is you want sufficient progesterone to balance the estrogen. You want sufficient progesterone, for example, for a lot of reasons, bones, calm, mood. But even let's say that a woman, ultimately we conclude she doesn't tolerate progesterone, and that does happen. It's very rare. Well, what's the bottom line? Is she getting overstimulation of the production of the endometrial lining? Is the estrogen pushing the formation of an endometrial lining, and she can bleed or she can form too thick of a lining? So what do? You monitor her. Duh. In medicine, there's this exquisite tool called ask her if she ever spots or bleeds. If she's on estrogen alone and you can't tolerate progesterone, you got a very clear signal. If she's got a uterus, she's going to spot or bleed if that endometrium gets too thick. And then we follow the bouncing ball. It doesn't mean there's something wrong there. This might mean a dosage adjustment. Or sometimes when we see a spot or bleed, the very first thing I want to do is something called a transvaginal ultrasound, because we can get an image of that endometrial lining and to see whether it's normal or abnormal. That's what it comes down to. So we're crossing the line here. And what it means for the woman is the same thing I say every single week. Here's your job. You're in perimenopause or you're in menopause. Here's your job. Number one is go shopping. See if you can find yourself, and please include us in the menopause method as part of your shopping trip.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
With someone who's expert, someone who's devoted part of their career or all of their careers, especially in treating women in menopause, because there's a lot of moving parts. That's your job. If you have that kind of professional relationship with an expert, you don't have to pre-think all these things. You don't have to know exactly what to do. The one thing you need to know how to do is, how can I go find someone I really like? I really trust, who really trust you. They're going to solve these kind of issues. Oh, we're getting a feedback down here.
I just kind of you sound okay. Sound okay now. And then I went in and out for a sec.
Why don't you put your mute on? That does it.
I don't even know where it.
Let me see. Let's see if that sounds better. Let's see. Can you hear me? You can hear me, Carolyn. Please shake your head. Yes, sir. So your job as a woman becomes the exact same job. Go shopping until you land. You may have to do some shopping. You may have to go through one or two. Excuse me. 1 or 2 or 5 different medical doctors or nurse practitioners in your state. Sidebar, one of the greatest things about these days is all the treatment you could possibly want from the level of expert that you need can be done by telemedicine. Oh, I can't hear you. I cannot hear you at all. Can you hear me?
No, you can hear me now, right?
Yes, I can, yeah.
Okay.
Let's try it.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just want to acknowledge it. The person says, how do I contact you? Can your service be done over the phone? So we're talking right now about telemedicine and how menopause medicine can be done via telemedicine, so on. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. The greatest thing about telemedicine and menopause is, for one thing, everything to receive expert specialist level of treatment with hormones in menopause can be done by telemedicine. That means it's just so long as you choose a licensed healthcare provider, a medical doctor, nurse practitioner, PA, that's in your state, they can treat you by telemedicine. And we list the states that we currently have people in our residency program, in our training program, and I mentor them on every case. But your job becomes find an expert. Then you can turn it over. You can relax. They'll figure all this stuff out. There's some moving parts here. And so it's not an automatic that you absolutely must give yourself progesterone, be treated with progesterone for the menstrual migraines. Number one, get that estrogen right, because who needs a migraine? I don't need to tell you that. And it doesn't take super amounts of estrogen to alleviate migraines. Not at all. And if you can get the balance with progesterone, all the more power to you. But if you're one of those very, very rare women that seems like that they don't tolerate progesterone, don't worry about it. This is the power of dealing with someone who can individualize your situation.
They've done their homework.
I'm going to repeat that. This is the power of dealing with someone who knows the menopause world well enough that we can treat you as an individual, because as any given individual, there's a path to a good life and to healing. And there's no exceptions to that. And so I don't want this woman to walk away and worry that, oh my God, I'm totally tainted because I need the estrogen to prevent the migraines, but I can't take progesterone. No, let go of it. You know, I have patients that I've never been able to solve the progesterone issue, and it's never been a problem. All the things that progesterone needs to do, somehow her body's compensating. Her bones are good. For example, I'm thinking of one patient in particular. Her mind is good. Her emotions are good. She's happy. She's alive. She's vital. She's 70. It's amazing. So don't be concerned. Life is not all about better living through biochemistry and we better get your numbers correct. No,
Right.
seems like there's a lot more to human life than that.
No. Yes. Thank you for that. Tracy, I will get with you later in regards to your question. I promise. So this woman also says, I am also feeling that I'm converting my testosterone to estrogen as I take testosterone cream, and my estrogen levels have gone to between 300 to 700. My testosterone is between 30 to 40. Does this make any sense to you? And if so, is there anything I can do about that?
Well, if you're from Denmark, something's rotten in Denmark.
Or if it's Tuesday, it must be Belgium, like that?
Something's wrong.
Yeah.
And when you say you're what I'm hearing and what I'm suspecting is you're quoting blood levels.
I believe that.
And these are two, but you cannot test a woman successfully by blood levels. You want to know what's really going on. Ultimately, you need to do the 24-hour urine hormone testing if you're dealing with a woman you're actually simultaneously treating with hormones. Now, I'm not saying you're not on excessive levels. For you to get high numbers, there's something wrong with the balance there. And yes, biochemically, the biochemical pathways, testosterone can become estradiol, you betcha. But geez, what kind of excessive testosterone levels would you need to be taking to get an elevated testosterone and an elevated estradiol? So what's rotten in Denmark, without me knowing the details, I think something's wrong with the dosages there. And this is the usual case. If someone is not dealing with this at a level of expertise, you can get into challenges with hormones, and they're so powerful that you get this oddball stuff happening. But does not matter. The process is the same. We can uncover where a woman is. And I know the method that we would take with a woman like herself. First, we would do an extensive questionnaire and we'd learn a lot about her. And from that, I'd get clues. And from the dosages she was on, I'd go, we don't have to test you. You're on too much. You got excessive symptoms. Let's stop what you're on. Let your body drain a little bit and restart to address the symptoms that are going to arise. And we'd also want to check out, and this is where I want to interject, what the kind of experts you need to be dealing with. When you're getting that high levels, the first question I ask myself is, have you gotten sex hormone binding globulin involved? Did you wind up overdosing to the point where you pushed your body into producing extra sex hormone binding globulin to protect you from the excessive levels? Right. You get into that kind of stuff. If none of it's a disease, but it's a challenge to back it on down. That's why I say we want an expert. So one of the first things I'd do with you if I was going to do any test is I'd like to see what that sex hormone binding globulin is, because those dosage tends to escalate, as I think you were pointing to, Carolyn. If you push up that sex hormone binding globulin. Oh, does this sound a little too technical? Yeah.
Especially for the newcomer.
Turn you to your main job.
Yes.
It all comes down to the same thing, especially when you get into situations like what you're describing. Right. Your job is to find someone who's treating women in menopause with hormones who really knows what they're doing. And here's some criteria you can use. Ask the office manager, because that's who you're going to be able to talk to most likely. Does my doctor or nurse practitioner, what kind of hormone testing do they do? If they mention that they're doing 24-hour urine hormone testing, I'm not meaning other types of urine testing. No, 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 no. Confined to 24-hour urine hormone testing. If they are doing that, that's your clue. This person has gone way out of their way to be an expert at this. It's not a guarantee, not a slam dunk. If they're not doing 24-hour urine hormone testing, whew, I just don't know how they've got the tools to sort you out. Ask them if they're doing sex hormone binding globulin testing. How do you find out about this? Ask them what percentage of their practice is devoted to treating women in menopause and how long have they been doing it and what kind of hormones they're prescribing. And the office manager, you're going to get a sense from the office manager about how much you're going to like or not like the healthcare provider. So shopping. You got a challenging situation going on there, not a disease. But you're talking about elevated estradiol and elevated testosterone, and you don't know about sex hormone binding globulin. You got a challenging situation there. They're all workable. Healing is possible. But you need someone who knows what they're doing, because someone who's been prescribing this, I'm with all due respect, I don't think they knew what they were doing. You'd never get up to those high levels. So go shopping, get this one corrected. Excessive levels of hormones are not okay in the long run.
Thank you so much for that. And I would suggest, please go back, listen to the playback, and write those questions down so that when you do call and do talk with the office manager or the, MA or whoever it is, the nursing assistant, whoever, you will know these questions. And, well, you don't have to know all the answers, but you'll get a good gut feeling, especially if they go, can you hold on? Let me go find out. And, that could be a very, very good thing. So thank you for your answers to that. I'm going to sneak a question in, and then I want to get into, because it's almost 7:30, what we decided last week to start off with. The question is, can progesterone convert over to testosterone?
Well, when you look at biochemical roadmaps, theoretically, a lot of these hormones are interchangeable, and there is a rare progesterone route to increasing the androgens. But what's the value of that question? Not real super valuable, because you're looking for a technicality that the bottom line is this. If you got hormonal imbalances, you're going to need treatment. If you're in your midlife or menopause or perimenopause, you're going to need treatment.
Right.
So the bottom line is, are you going to find someone who really knows what they're doing? Or are you going to find someone who does not really know what they're doing?
To go on to find someone who doesn't know what they're doing, and on and on and on and on and on.
And go from one to another, and people are shooting in the dark. And, anyone who fractures their forearm because they fell from a tree can probably go to 90% of the orthopedic surgeons on the planet Earth and get that arm set. According to standards of care, these roadmaps have been laid down on how to repair a fractured forearm for centuries. The orthopedic surgeons who are healing, who are repairing fractured forearms, they've gone through a rigorous, maybe 3 to 5 year surgical residency. 3 of the years, 2 of the years specializing in there have been orthopedic medicine. They've been mentored. They've been taught. And if you go on to social media, you don't see thousands of people with fractured forearms going, what do I do? I went to this doctor, but they did this. I can't figure it out. This one said it. No, there is no controversy.
We don't have a lot of groups for orthopedics.
Yeah, for fracturing the forearm, because the standard of care is laid down, and the trainings programs are wonderful for these folks. and 90% of probably the orthopedic surgeons, I'm just making up a number, but they're going to do a good job. That's not true about the world of menopause. Ooh, it took such a body blow that there's been no specialist to speak of ever since the early 2000s, when the Women's Health Initiative study poisoned the whole field and people avoided it. So a woman reaches out today to get good care, and it's not so easy. So how to put this? First of all, I have to retrieve in my neuronal system up here. What was that question again?
Those pathways are moving. They are. The question was, can progesterone convert over to testosterone?
This is a technical issue that it's fun to think out loud about it, but bottom line, the answer to that question comes down to the individual woman and what does she test out at.
Right.
Or you could get clues if a woman said, the only thing I've been taking is progesterone and I've got hair growing on my chin. Oh yeah, she's one of those converters. They're not common, but that pathway is there. Okay, so what do? You figure out how to balance the estrogen, the progesterone, and the testosterone and get it right. Because you don't want hair on your chinny chin. Not absolutely. No. But that's why I wanted to break it down for you. If you want to know if you're one of those converters, well, are you getting symptoms of testosterone excessiveness, like extra aggression, or you're getting hair growth where you don't want it, or you're getting acne and oily skin? These are symptoms of excessive amount of testosterone. That's one place to begin. So I don't know what the origin of this woman's question really is, because there's not background there. But the bottom line is, if you're dealing with someone who knows about this, it's not that hard to sort out. They ask you a bunch of questions. They do the proper testing if need be, or they take you off the excessive doses of whatever you're on. But could progesterone convert to androgens? Yeah. And some of the artificial progesterones called progestins, UGG, they can be more testosterone-ish than they are progesterone-ish. And here I'm talking about progestins like MPA, medroxyprogesterone acetate. Some of the artificial progestins, they're not progesterone. They're artificial progestins that were in the birth control pill. So there are women who are getting birth control pills that did develop hair, did develop oily skin, because the progestins were tended to be more androgenic than they were progesterone-ish.
Yes,
so
and
it seems technical and challenging. Let me break it down for you again. If something odd is happening and you're uncomfortable about it, seek out someone who knows what they're doing and have them sort it out. I know it's a lot to ask. I know when I say, oh yeah, just go out there and find someone who's expert, and I can afford it because it's going to be cash out of pocket and I'm going to be able to find them. I say, link up with us. Right now, our program has been live for, it's been live for 15 years. We've been training physicians and nurse practitioners, but our expert program, our specialist program, has been live for 4 months, and we're already in 12 states. We plan to be in all 50 of them. And this morning, my partners and I were on with a gentleman in Australia. Fun, big fun. So
we're getting there. The village is growing. It is, and I find it highly exciting. So, everything that you said, and I'm welcoming everybody here, and thank you for being here. I see your questions. We've tried to answer them, some of them. We'll get to them. I get screenshots of these. So our next half hour is devoted to what it is that we were talking about in Tuesday's interview, and that has to do with bias the dosing of bias, I had brought up how amazing to me it was to find that my dosages could be changed. So hypothetically, I was given 50-50, which means 50 milligrams of estradiol, 50 milligrams of estriol at a certain milligram per milliliter. I thought that was it for the rest of my life and I'd go on my merry way. Come to find that was not so. Doctor, if you can move a little to your left a little bit, because I'm seeing half your face. There you go. Okay, thank you. And so can we talk about dosages and, milligrams per milliliter? And, because a woman asked a question that was very interesting to me. She said, she's not taking menopause method replenishing hormones. However, she is taking progesterone in an oil. And she said she took 20 milligrams of that and she was just loopy. And I thought, I don't know, well, I just didn't know. And so and I know and maybe you can explain this out to us, how this works. As we talked about the gods of medicine, and you and Dr. Jonathan Wright and Lindsay Berkson and all the amazing people that have developed over many, months, times, years, eons, centuries, whatever, the correct dosing of estradiol and estriol. I know you know what I'm asking.
Yes, I do. This is good. One thing I wanted to do, Carolyn, is I saw that question about what states are we currently active in. And so I'm going to email you a screenshot of that so you can announce that. But it's Arizona, California, Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, Maryland, Maine, Virginia, Washington, West Virginia.
Florida. Thank you.
Back to your question. The great news is that 1,000 years ago, the Chinese figured out that if they collected the urine of young, healthy women and let it dry out, and they fed the dried out urine to females in the menopause, that the females had more youthfulness and preservation of the female powers and strengths and health. Because in the urine were the hormones. They didn't know that, but that's what was in there. And then in the 1940s, the pharmaceutical manufacturers captured the urine of pregnant horses, pregnant mares, and developed this manufacturing technique to put 18 million American women in menopause on horse urine-derived estrogens, and a lot of good was done.
Right.
In other words, taking estrogens, for example, I'm not talking about progesterone, testosterone, et cetera. I'm just talking about estrogen. A lot of good can be done just by restoring even horse urine-derived estrogens, only 50% of which the human female has ever seen. Mm-hmm. But then along comes this medical doctor and this pharmacist in the early 1980s, and they started saying, do we really want to treat women with horse urine-derived estrogens? Because you're talking about estrogens, Carolyn. 50% of which the human female has never seen, and we can't even test for it. No. So simultaneously, they came up with solutions. The medical doctor wanted to copy nature, and the medical doctor was already familiar with 24-hour urine hormone testing. And the medical doctor asked his pharmacist, do you think he could get a hold of some pure, molecularly identical estrogens rather than these estrogens derived from horse urine? And sure enough, their compounding pharmacist did, because it was pretty well known that the pharmaceutical industry, when they went to manufacture birth control pills, they wanted a pure estradiol rather than horse urine derived estrogens. So when young women took birth control pills, the estrogen part of that pill was not horse urine derived, it was pure estradiol, one of the 3 estrogens, the most potent one of all. So, long story short, if there is such a thing with me, I don't know that there is such a thing with me.
That's okay.
This medical doctor and this pharmacist outside of Dallas who came up with bioidentical estradiol and put it in gels, they started offering through their compounding pharmacists non-horse urine derived estrogens. No, pure, molecularly identical, otherwise known as bioidentical estrogens to copy nature. Now, it turned out the medical doctor, Dr. Jonathan Wright, bless his heart, my dear friend, I have so much fun with him, amazing. He had developed a laboratory that did 24-hour urine hormone testing. So he had the ability to treat a woman with estrogens, for example, and then to test her. And he had this totally radical, extreme idea called don't reinvent the human female biochemistry, just sort of see if you can copy nature. And when you're treating a woman, that her estrogens, for example, sort of look like what a young woman's estrogens do in balance. And since there's 3 estrogens, there's not one. There's estradiol, that's the most potent and popular one. There's estriol, ooh, that's a big story. Read my book, Happy Healthy Hormones. I explain all of this. There's estrone. So Dr. Wright said, when all is said and done and a woman's symptoms alleviated that you're treating with, the estrogens you're treating her with, just have, when you test her, the estrogen profile look like that of a young woman.
Right.
Rather than be very different than a young woman.
Right.
And what Dr. Wright landed on was treating women with biased. That includes a formulation of estradiol, sure enough, that's the most potent estrogen, plus estriol, and usually 4 times as much, not always, 4 times as much estriol as estradiol. And I go into great explanation of this in my book. So if you want the details,
yeah.
Carolyn's offered the book, no charge PDF on ins and outs of menopause. So go read it.
Easy.
But here's the bottom line. Whenever I see women coming into my office, they've been on a biased or a triest, and they've got these odd percentages, like 50-50. Here's what I automatically, almost certainly know. Someone was guessing. Someone was not doing 24-hour urine hormone testing and was not copying nature. There could be exceptions. Someone might have changed to a 50-50 because they did the testing and they saw that the woman actually needed that, rare as that might be. I don't know where these ideas came up of 50-50 or 60-40. I don't know who got those ideas, because very often if you test those women, they're not copying nature when you're looking at their final results. So I'm with Dr. Wright all the way. Don't reinvent the human female hormone patterns. And usually biased 80-20, but we'll do it. We'll get you right in the ballpark. And for a lot of reasons, and I go into those reasons again in our book, Happy Healthy Hormones. Sometimes you do have to go 70-30, 60-40, 50-50, 40-60, yes. But the only way I get to find out that those kind of changes are needed, the only way is when I'm looking on a woman who's been treated with biased, and I see her 24-hour urine hormone test shows me, we need to change the balance here. She needs to copy nature. We need to get a little more estradiol in there. And we will change the percentages, but only after viewing the 24-hour urine hormone test. Otherwise, I don't understand how people are making this wild guess. It's an idea they have, but it doesn't necessarily copy nature.
Yes. Yes. I have had that experience. I have had it changed myself. I did the 24-hour urine. It's very strict. You have to follow it to a T. I was very pleased in that I didn't have to go far deep into the weeds and the technicalities, though I enjoy doing that. Um, the doctor that was referred to me by you knows this stuff. So I felt very, very safe. So I guess that in regards to that, you can't just, well, I guess you can, but maybe, I don't know, would you feel that it's a good idea to just go ahead and go out and get some progesterone oil and dose yourself with it at 20 milligrams? Can you give yourself 20 milligrams?
This is a different question to me entirely.
Yeah, it's made up by me right now, so you don't have to answer it if you don't want.
Well, no. I mean, for one thing, you can go out and get progesterone.
Mm-hmm.
You can get topical. That means it applies to your skin. Over the counter. It means in health food stores or online, legal progesterone in a cream. The maximum amount allowed, at least I haven't checked into it lately, is 18 milligrams per milliliter.
What's the per milliliter? Yeah.
1.8%. And if a young woman who was paying attention to her body and started realizing that she was getting into progesterone insufficiency symptoms in her 30s, if the only option available to her was to go out and get some over-the-counter progesterone and start taking it, I say all the more power to you. Do it. It's very, very beneficial. And there's going to come a point where that's not strong enough.
Right.
Especially as you go into menopause.
Yes.
You're faced with the exact same thing. That is the bottom line to these Facebook Lives that we do, is that by the time you're getting into menopause, you're going to need prescription grade progesterone sooner or later. And by the time you need that, you're going to need prescription grade biased or estrogen. And you're definitely going to need prescription grade testosterone plus DHEA. Oh, right. You're crossing over. You're getting into where you got to get licensed professional prescriber. Oh, do it. That's why I can't say it long enough or strong enough or repeat it enough. Your job is to do your research, reach out, someone who's specializing and is expert, and they're devoting their professional life to becoming fantastic at treating women in menopause with bioidentical hormones. And I've told this story before. I've had a lifelong interest in automobiles. And it really got serious when I was in my 20s. I decided to take the plunge and see if I could rebuild my Corvair van engine, which needed it. And I was doing an internship at the time. And I got some advice from the local expert senior mechanic, and I rebuilt my Corvair engine under somewhat of his supervision. It was fantastic. I rebuilt an engine, and that engine went 7,000 miles before it froze. I rebuilt the engine. It ran for 7,000 miles. And then I purchased a couple of years later one of those wonderful Volkswagen vans. And the first things that this is like 1980s.
Yeah, I was going to say a little early. Okay.
And that engine needed rebuilding, and I had learned something. I had learned if you're going to go that deep into that, you better do it right the first time, or you're going to do another freeze job at 7,000 miles.
Or maybe earlier, huh?
So I went out and found a mechanic that his whole thing was rebuilding old Volkswagen engines. And this is in the back of the day that when I asked this mechanic, could I watch him do it? Because I was curious. And he said, sure, come hang out with me. It took him 2 days to rebuild that engine. And when I watched what he did and the tools he had to do it and the precision at which he did things, my jaw dropped. I went, look at that. I rebuilt my Corvair engine and I left all these steps out. Oh my God, no wonder the thing froze. The mechanic had rebuilt, who knows, hundreds of VW engines. The mechanic knew what to do. And I love that VW van. It was a whole different experience. So sorry to be so lengthy there, but your job becomes the same. You don't want to have to supervise your treatment in menopause.
Well, exactly.
You got one job. Whether it's at rebuilding your Corvair engine or addressing your hormones, you want to link up with someone, number one, who can write your prescription.
Yeah.
And number two, that they really know what they're doing. And that's your only job.
Well, it's an interesting correlation. I mean, being a doctor and rebuilding an engine, there has to have something to do with innards.
And experience and education and supervision.
Absolutely.
But to go back to the original question, over-the-counter progesterone, God bless you, you're going to do some good. And it's certainly worth a try. And if you're 32 years old and you're starting to get anxiety and sleep disturbance, hey, go grab the over-the-counter progesterone and slather it on. You're not going to hurt yourself. And see if you can get some benefit. And that'll buy you some time, because the likelihood of your progesterone diminishing faster and deeper than your progesterone in your early 30s or mid 30s is very strong. So you can address it over the counter and buy yourself some time, while meanwhile you do your main job, which is to go out shopping and find someone who really knows what you're doing. Find your equivalent of my auto mechanic who had rebuilt hundreds of Volkswagen engines rather than me rebuilding my second engine. I wasn't going to put that time and energy again.
No, and the propylene glycol and the frozen hands and all that stuff. And I know this story, and it's fascinating, and it's a great story. And it's not in your book, but going back to the book, all of this is explained in the book, and it's explained in a way that's really fun. It's very understandable, and the more we learn, the less we fear, and then the more empowered we become to be able to do the doctor shopping, know who it is out there who is good. And you guys can always write me. Certainly, there are lots of ways to get to the menopause method that I love. And yeah, I mean, if we're going to be taking these hormones the rest of our lives, if we're 50, 55, 60, 65, 70, whatever, as you say, always, your life will matter to you as much in that day, if you're 90 or you're 62 or whatever, as it does right here, right now, this moment. Do it right from the beginning, then you've got it right, and you can go enjoy the rest of your life and have thighs that'll support you, right? Because we don't want to lose our bones, and we don't want to lose our muscle, and all that stuff that goes along with not replacing vital hormones so badly needed. A question came up. We will visit it later. I just want to say it out loud, because we go here all the time. You do not have to answer this, but the question was, do hormones basically cause cancer? Okay. I just want to say that question. And we certainly will visit that. Download the book, Happy Healthy Hormones, the book Estrogen Matters you can get. We've often discussed, I did have cancer myself. I do take hormones, and I feel very safe in doing so. But that's where the doctor shopping comes in. Yeah? And look at this. We're speechless, Dr. R.
Not me. I'm ready to roll. We had an emergency question come in this morning, Carolyn, and if it's okay, I'd like to address it.
Please.
Yeah, there was a woman who asked a question about DES and what this is about. And
I didn't see that, and I apologize.
I know, no, this came in through some other mechanism, and I want to respond to that.
Please.
She was a, quote, DES baby, and end quote. And diethylstilbestrol is a very strong hormone that about 30, 40, 50 years ago was given to many women when they were pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, it was discovered that this was a risky thing. And it took quite a while before it was discovered medically that women who were born of mothers that were given DES, diethylstilbestrol, while their mothers were pregnant, so these women were in the womb when their mothers were treated with this high-dose hormone, artificial hormone, these women got vulnerable to having an increased incidence of female cancers. Holy mackerel. I have a dear friend and doctor herself who's an expert in this field, who was a DES baby.
I didn't know she was a DES baby.
And sure enough, she had multiple female cancers. So here's the bottom line. DES has been outlawed. This is not something that continues to happen, thank God. Women who are pregnant are no longer being treated with DES. But if your mother was treated with DES, here's the necessary thing for you to do. Go to a gynecologist who knows what they're doing and get checked out, because they can monitor you for possible vaginal cancer, for ovarian cancer, for breast cancer. They can do basic examinations plus specific, special high technical examinations like transvaginal ultrasounds, not that invasive, mammograms, not that invasive, to follow you. Because the one thing about any cancers, and especially female cancers, is detect them early. So here's the takeaway. If your mom was given DES, you need to hook up with an expert gynecologist. They're all trained in this, so this shouldn't be too hard to find, who knows how to monitor your breasts and your pelvis, your pelvic organs, and they're good at it. And most of them are trained to do that. So your real job is to find a gynecologist that you like and trust.
Right. And
they're going to know what DES is.
Right.
And they're going to know how to monitor you. And that's all you need to know.
Okay.
It's the same thing. Go shopping. If you're a DES baby, your main job is to go shopping for a gynecologist that you like and trust. And you get there, you'll be home free, because they will know how to monitor you. And if anything's there's no guarantee that you're going to get a cancer. No way. You just have increased risk for that. So they know how to monitor you, and that's how you cover it. That's the to-do. If you're a DES baby, you need a reasonable gynecologist. They'll know what to do, and you'll be monitored. And just trust them. They're going to know how and when and how much monitoring to do. Just do it. It's great.
Right. Right. Thank you for that, DES. And there are a lot of really, really, really good OBGYNs out there. And so there's a difference, certainly with that. And then, menopause medicine, and we can go there later. But yeah, there are some amazing OBGYNs out there, and I see the time.
You're psychic again. You pulling that psychic stuff on me again. You saw
No, I opened Pandora's box in our last interview, and the spirits are just floating all over the place, and I can't get rid of them.
So, Carolyn, I'm going to see you again on Tuesday. Always a pleasure. What fun.
Indeed.
I really enjoy our bi-weekly hangout together, and to all the women who tune in, It's an honor and pleasure, and we'll keep rocking and rolling and get into all these questions.
But for right now, we got to bounce.
Yeah, we do.
You got lots to do. Many blessings to everybody. Dr. R, please send me a screenshot so I can add them to my other screenshots to add to my other screenshots. And we will get there. And thank you, ladies, so much. I'm glad I can comment on my page again, or my group, our group. Have a blessed, blessed day, Dr. R. To all the women and men who are up here, have a very, very blessed day. Fabulous, safe, incredible weekend. Call upon those gods. They're there. And enjoy.
Bye-bye, Carolyn. Bye-bye, everybody.